Yeah, we could do that. Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, to Between Two Pastries. This is Nicole.
Hey, everyone. It's Annie here.
And today we decided, after we went through about 16,000 different topics, that we were going to discuss a little bit about inflammation.
So, what do you mean by that? Because I think inflammation is kind of a tossed around word, don't you think? I mean, that's a real broad, I mean, am I inflamed? You know, I could be inflamed right now.
You are inflamed right now. You're one hot inflamed.
I'm so inflamed. All right, well, signing out. All right, reset.
Yeah. So inflammation, there's a couple different types of inflammation, and we can have the physical type of inflammation, and then we can also have kind of the immune type of inflammation. Or the physiologic, where inflammation turns into disease. And in truly, when it does come down to inflammation, the foundation of disease is inflammation, period.
Right.
That we have.
What kind of diseases
it somewhere.
So
inflammation
what do we see that with?
That's associated with metabolic syndrome. It's associated with cardiac, with diabetes, with cancer.
Like broad-field everything, I feel like.
It
really.
Literally can. That's the thing.
But I want to make something really clear. When, we talk about inflammation, and obviously we are a nutrition podcast, so like we're talking about nutrition, and now in this conversation, inflammation. We are not in any way saying that eating or drinking everything anti-inflammatory is going to stop these diseases from potentially occurring to you.
Correct.
These are things where, again, this is why I said, inflammation is a very broad word that really gets, tossed around in the media. It's very tongue-in-cheek when people use that word anti-inflammatory or inflammation.
Right.
So it's really important to remember, because we're saying that diabetes, for example, is kind of rooted in an inflammatory response occurring, doesn't mean that if you don't do every anti-inflammatory thing out there that you're going to end up with diabetes. That is not a symptom of.
No, truly it isn't. Truly it isn't. And inflammation is there for a reason. It's actually good because it's a signal to the body that either it's fighting something off or healing. Even healing in your body can create inflammation, but it's when the body is it's too stimulated,
right?
And it's like all systems are overwhelmed, that it starts getting into this chronic inflammation, and then that is essentially what can lead to certain things.
Well, and obviously, y'all know I'm in the athletic world. I'm going to be very frank with you. We are inflamed as athletes all the time. And not because of what we're eating. It is 100% because of the sport and that we're doing. And the fact that we can't stop sometimes, and many of you know who you are, who don't want to take rest days or recovery periods, where that inflammation is now there all the time. And so eat everything, McDonald's and things that cause inflammation or not, but when you're doing running the way that I do it, where it's an everyday thing, there comes a point where you might not be able to avoid inflammation.
Absolutely. It's a matter of controlling it as much as possible. So even when we're talking about, and I shouldn't even say controlling it, but trying to manage it, I guess is probably a better term.
And do you feel inflammation?
Well, that's just it. You'll feel it obviously if you've got a sore something or other. But but I mean, in a disease state, a lot of people don't really realize that at all. No. But on an athletic, just to sort of finish that thought real quick, I mean, even at the even with the team and at the clubhouse too, it's like the foundation of everything we do is to help with inflammation because they don't have enough rest days.
Right.
Because there's game
headers
after game after game after game, and that body can't come down. So nutrition then can play a higher stake in that, because the more that we're giving to the body to help it manage, the better. But we're not taking it completely away. And I think that's what's just needs to be understood. It's not something that ever really goes away. We just want to kind of keep it squelched as much as possible.
So what do you do for them? I mean, I know everyone knows I'm a big preacher of, running, and maybe you have Pop-Tarts or Twinkies or McDonald's, and you have fruits and you have gels or whatever. You use whatever works in your gut, and that gives you carbohydrates or energy. When you're out racing, but those are by and large inflammatory type foods,
and that's, I think, what people don't quite understand.
Right. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of the key right there. So what you're talking about, Annie, and I mean, with all the work that you do and the length and distances that you run, you need kind of constant fuel coming in, just like a car would. Hate using that analogy all the time, but it's kind of true.
It's true, yeah.
The issue the non-issue, I should say, is that when you are using a Pop-Tart, a gel, or anybody for that matter, literally that energy is coming in. It's not only saving your brain, thank goodness that's happening.
We need our brain.
But it's helping your muscles fire and continue to fire without disruption, because that fuel is literally coming in and it's moving out of the bloodstream.
Right.
The issue is when people choose to eat those things when they're not moving. Now we're overwhelming a bloodstream. Now, because we're not actually moving, we're movement, and the muscles pull all that from that bloodstream. Now it's kind of hanging out a little longer than we'd like it to. Now that's when day after day after day after day after day of doing that, it can start leading to some discomfort and therefore inflammation. And just to finish this point.
Yeah.
With that being said, too, that creates more disruption in that gut, which creates overall inflammation, which all of a sudden you think you're allergic to everything you eat.
There it is.
Do you see what I'm saying? So,
boom.
So there's a whole thing with that. And so, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to cut you
off,
Annie. I just wanted to
I
finish this thing off, because it also then leads to the whole thing about everyone's allergic to things, and it's like, I have an intolerance to life. No, you don't. Actually, it's, if we just take a look at a few things for you,
right? All of a sudden,
what we do find, So,
right.
So that's what I'm saying. It's like one thing. It's crazy, actually. So
no, I love all of that, and that is so important that we do talk about allergies and these intolerances that no one really actually has.
Well, yeah,
what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean, I say that tongue in cheek, but
yeah.
It's really, a lot of it is because we keep disrupting our gut microbia, and then the bacteria's got to reform and all of that. And again, this is a series on inflammation because there's so much to it and so many different avenues. But something I wanted to say, you talk about athletes eating, I'm going to use this example because I was on a conference call with Hostess last year sometime, and we were on a call talking about sponsorship and stuff like that, because at the time I was using a lot of their products and stuff like that. And the lady I was talking to, who kind of runs all the athlete stuff, which sounds really weird because we don't think of it, was saying, she's like, I've been on a lot of conference calls with White Sox players and their managers and stuff about how they want to get a sponsorship because all of the White Sox use, Hostess, whatever,
oh, gosh.
Right.
I can't.
And they're eating that stuff. So,
even believe that.
Well, and so we have to talk about strength sport versus an endurance sport and how that all breaks down.
My gosh.
And she said to me, she's like, I find this really interesting because these products were developed as a, now the word escapes me, but a delicacy.
That's actually very well put. And,
Twinkies are delicacies.
And what about a delicacy?
Right
It's like you don't have them. Yeah,
you don't have it every. So she found it really interesting that athletes are using. Right. Okay. So now we talk about inflammation, and we talk about people who don't do athletics, who then this is every day in the lunchbox.
Sure.
Is is an inflammatory.
Stop at the gas station and grab one.
Right.
And
again, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, balance and moderation is what we want to preach. But when things become a routine and the body stays in a perpetual state of inflammation, then we start to now we have an issue, right? And then the gut microbia are changing, etc. But I found it really interesting to hear a whole baseball team was using Hostess products.
Mind-blowing, especially because you said it was like last year. I mean, that's mind-blowing to me.
And it kind of caught me. I was like, oh, cool, so I have a chance.
You have a chance.
Oh, I got a chance then. Yeah. But then I was thinking, wait a second. The way I metabolize that type of food or my inflammatory response as an endurance athlete versus a strength athlete is very different.
Very different.
So I thought it was just very interesting that because when you run and cycle and swim and you do endurance activities, it doesn't matter per se that you're eating inflammatory, quote unquote, inflammatory foods in that moment.
It's the timing of this
it's
stuff.
It's so the timing, because you don't want to do it right after when you're recovering either. You know, you want to make sure that, or before, you're getting like tart cherry juices coming in, things like that. We're getting some of those inflammatory stoppers in there, but just thought that was very interesting.
No, that's super, super interesting. But, and also just to kind of put a point out there too, it's the amount of exposure. So what are you exposing your body to on a daily basis? And that's what I tell people, and that's what it's, if you're exposing your body to these things on a daily basis, the outcome is going to be something. But if the exposure is 10% of the time, it's going to be all good because your body knows how to regulate.
Right.
But when you keep kind of, offending it,
right.
or what I'm saying, with certain things, then your body's going to get, just like we get overwhelmed by.
Oh yeah. Well, and
our brain gets overwhelmed by something, So
I think it's important. I don't want to mention at all I don't want to mention foods that cause inflammation, because I think that that's silly, because it's not always in every body, right? Like it's all very different. But to talk about, one of the things that I know can help with inflammation is blueberries, right? So, but now I want you to think about eating as many blueberries as you need to eat to help stop inflammation from occurring, and now go out on a run.
Right.
Okay, you're going to have a poop storm hit you,
right?
Like we have to be...
Not the time to do it.
Not the time. So, we also have to be mindful of those things that, again, like Nicole said, the timing in which we eat these things is really important.
Yeah.
So, having, an entire cup or two of blueberries because you're nervous you're going to be inflamed today is maybe not the best idea. But if you have a quarter to a half a cup every day, long term, that makes a difference, right? So, again, it's just balance and moderation, I guess, totally at the end of the day, right? I mean, that's really, there's not much more to say than that.
Totes, right? No, it's really, really true. Yeah.
So, and again, I don't want to list foods to eat, not eat. That's not the point. I think that can be really dangerous, but that I think the bigger thing to note is that the timing of things can really have an impact.
Yeah.
And it's okay to have inflammatory foods. Right. Or foods, you know what I mean. Yeah.
Because again, you don't just eat something and you're instantly inflamed.
Right.
And I think that there is
I picture like the Michelin Man.
Yeah.
Or like the Ghostbusters Marshmallow Man.
I mean, I will say though, for some arthritic clients that I work with.
And that's at the site of the joint.
Yeah. That would be inflammation within the joint. Yes. Sometimes people are that sensitive where if they have something that they know creates that inflammation for them, they will almost instantaneously feel it. That's a little different than what we're also kind of, talking about when I talk about you're not going to eat something and instantly get inflamed, So, but for the general population, that isn't going to happen. It is an over time thing, and it has everything to do with the amount of exposure you give it.
Correct. Right.
Yeah. So.
We're all going to be eating. We're all going to have a Twinkie and walk around like Marshmallow Men. It's not going to happen. It doesn't work that way. But how cool would it be if it did?
It was very funny.
I just picture it. Yeah. Just do it. right.
So look out for. I'm actually doing a talk on inflammation. It's one of the ones that I get frequently requested for. Very interesting stuff. So check it out. There's a link.
Is it on your website?
Yeah, links on the website. I'm also going to include the link here on our Between Two Pastries.
Yep.
And you can check that out and go for it.
Yep. So wayoflifenutrition.com.
Yep.
Or betweentwopastries.com.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Check it out.
Look
Inflammation
forward to it.
is important.
That's right.
Bye.
Bye.